$1.4 million, that's a number I want you to remember. And that's not my annual salary, although I wish I could say that it was today. It's not. But I'd like for you to remember that because we're going to come back to it. Diane's asked me here to talk a little bit about myself, so I'm going to tell you where I came from, how I got to where I am. I am a native Houstonian, and I went to high school. It's Scarborough High School. It's an HISD school, 290 and Antoine, if anybody is familiar with that area. And when I graduated, I was the child of a single parent. My mother said, well, you know, I don't know if you're going to be able to go to college. Certainly, maybe you can go someplace locally. But I was lucky enough to get a scholarship to Texas A&M. And as my mother told me, I went to Texas A&M and I majored in education because she said, you know what, that's a safe career for a woman. All women should be teachers. So I did. I went to A&M and I majored in education, and I went to work at the computer center. Well, the computer center, the computer at Texas A&M was in a room about this size, and I was fascinated with the computer. I thought, this is my calling. I don't want to be a teacher. I want to study computers. So I changed my major, and I went on to graduate from Texas A&M. And while I was getting my master's degree, I was offered an internship position with the Department of Defense. They were working on the Apache helicopter, and after graduation, I was offered actually a position with the Department of Defense in Corpus Christi, Texas. So I packed up my beat-up blue pickup truck and I drove to Corpus Christi and moved in and had a delightful term on that project. But when the project came to an end, I had to find something else to do. I was a developer on that project, and I was offered a position with the Department of the Navy. And actually that position was in Newport, Rhode Island. Does anybody know where Newport, Rhode Island is actually? Some of us do. Well, Newport was a little bit different climate-wise than Corpus Christi. So I packed up my board shorts and my flip-flops, and I moved to Newport, Rhode Island, where actually I bought everything wool I could possibly find the first year I was there. But I also had a new experience because that was the first time I was able to manage a team of IT specialists. So it was very exciting for me because I realized I had not only IT skills, but the skills that I needed to actually develop other people, to work as a team, and to really get things done. So we were very successful at that project, working on the underwater nuclear submarine, the Trident. But I got an opportunity somewhere else. A company that called Trans-European Marketing, they were an international food broker, was putting together this project around this new thing called PCs. And so we had these little bitty computers, and we've got them on everybody's desk, but we really don't know how to really make them work in our office environment. So they thought I was the perfect person for that job. And I'm happy they did because they sent me to their home office in Frankfurt, Germany. And so I was to put together the network, the new term network. Those computers were going to be able to talk to each other in Frankfurt for their European offices, Europe-wide, continental Europe-wide. And it was a great opportunity again. It was another challenge because I was not only reporting to the CEO, who was here in the United States. I got to have one-on-one time with him. I got to present my ideas to him. But I also got a chance to put my hands on a network for the first time and make computers talk to each other, which at the time was really cutting edge. I mean, I know we think about it now. It's like, oh, let's get onto the network and let's blog and let's do all kinds of other things. But at the time, computers talking to each other was a very different thing. And also, I got the opportunity to go out on the German economy, learn to speak German, travel Europe, and make that project work in a culture that was different than my own. And I loved Germany. I loved the company I worked for, but it came time for my husband at the time to come back to the U.S. And so, of course, I went with him, with my 2 children in tow. And I ended up in a situation where there weren't many IT jobs available in the area where he was working. So I decided to go back to school and get my doctorate, because there was a large university, Oklahoma State University, in the area. So I decided that that was going to be what I wanted to do, and spend my time studying. And I did that, and decided that academia was an interest of mine. And that's when I happened to apply for a position, wanting to come home desperately, come home to Houston. I applied for a position here at Lone Star College, and I wasn't successful at the time. They sent me a letter and said, thanks for applying, but we really have somebody else for that job. And I thought, oh, well, but we'll keep your resume on file. I was disappointed. But about a month later, I got a call, and it was like, this is Kingwood College. And I'm like, where's that? I don't think I've ever heard of those people. And so anyway, the rest is history. I got a chance to come here and was eventually given the job of Associate Vice Chancellor at the district office. And again, that challenge was I was able to work with the integrated team of IT specialists, people that did application development, people that supported the application, a service desk, a network infrastructure team. So it was, again, that next challenge in my career development. And as part of that, I started thinking, how can I, considering we're a not-for-profit, how can I make IT work more efficiently and effectively while still offering the same level of customer satisfaction that some of the larger organizations do? And as part of that, as part of my research, as part of my networking, getting out and talking to me, how are you doing it at your company? How can I bring this back? I began to be known in Houston as kind of a subject matter expert around that. And that's when I got the call from BP that said, please come on board. We're starting a best practice initiative in our trading organization, and we'd love for you to come and drive that project. And so I was really excited, not only to put those best practices into use in a global organization, but to also be back with a global organization where I had the opportunity to work with people of different cultures again. And that was going swimmingly. I had a really good time doing that. The traders were very exciting. It was where their motto on the trade floor were minutes or millions. And so we were a very technologically advanced organization in the trading environment. But then something called Macondo Well exploded. Does anybody remember the Macondo Well incident? And so I got the call from our upstream division, which is our exploration part of BP, where we go and find the oil and bring it out of the ground, the hydrocarbons. And they asked me to be the incident manager, the IT incident manager, for the Macondo Well incident. So I moved into the upstream building, and from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning, I managed all of our IT environments and the people that came in and came out as part of that incident for that period of time until we capped the well. And that was very exciting. And it also got me the opportunity to work with exploration and production, which is the upstream arm of BP. And that's where I went back to after the incident was over. And I then went to global strategy, which is where we put together a plan for what our CEO likes to call lower for longer, and that's oil prices being lower for a longer period of time. So kind of the new way our IT environment will work. And now I'm part of that environment as the service manager for the global service manager for the Western Hemisphere. But I want to get back to where I started, and that was, what was the number I asked you to remember? 1.4 million. And why is that number important? Well, I'll tell you why it is important. Because by the year 2020, there will be 1.4 million IT jobs available in this country, and only 6 out of 10 of those will be able to be filled by IT professionals at the current rate of graduation. 6 out of 10. And 3 out of 10 of those will require 4-year degrees. The other portion of those will require technology certifications such as the ones that you can get here at Lone Star College. And why is that even more important to the ladies in the room? Because right now, only 18% of the IT graduates today are female. 18%. That's not enough, ladies, because we are important in the workplace. Businesses want women at the board, in the boardrooms and at the table, speaking for the diverse opinion that we bring to the table. We have a voice, and they want to hear it. In fact, research has been done that proves that when you have women in your workforce, you are a more successful organization. So that's in writing. We know that. So they're going to be looking for you. And with an IT degree or an IT certification, you're going to be even more valuable to them. So as I leave here today, I want to leave you with some way forward, what we call at BP, the way forward. And that is try new things. If I had never gone out and I'd said, no, I don't want to work in the computer room, I don't know anything about computers, I would have never found the career that I've been in and I've been so successful at the last, I don't want to say, but maybe it's 30 years. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do something, because sometimes stubbornness can be a good thing. My mother said, oh my God, you can't change your major. You're terrible at math. You can't be in computers. Well, not so much. I guess I was able to overcome that. Next, find something that you're passionate about, because passion can take you a long way. If you're passionate about something, you're going to work harder and you're going to feel more satisfied when you get to where you're going. And also, don't be afraid to ask for help. I was terrible at math, but I got tutors. I asked my professors for help. I went in after class and said, hey, I just don't get this. Can you help me? And you know what? It proved to them that not only was I there to learn, but I was enthusiastic about getting where I was going. So I was driven, and they could see that. Ask for help. And lastly, investigate your postgraduate degree or career options early, and I hope that's why you're here, is to find out what else is out there, to find out what is next for you in your life. My mentor once told me, and yes, I still, even today, I have a mentor, so I suggest you find one too. But my mentor told me something that actually the CIO of our company had told her, and that is, early in your career, you go deep. And that's where you are today. You're going to go deep. You're going to you're going to get your education, you're going to get your certifications, you're going to work very hard at that thing you're passionate about. And what that will bring you is the opportunity to go broad. And in that part of your career, you're going to go travel the world. You're going to go to a different organization. You're going to experience different industries. That's the go broad. And then finally, I hope that you are where I am today, and you have the opportunity to find out what it means in your life and in your career to go long. And that is to give back. Give back in your community, as Diane's been doing. Give back to your profession, or give back to others, as I'm trying to do for you tonight. So, go deep, go broad, and go long. Thank you.
So, thank you so much for having me. I wanted to ask y'all a question. Who here knows what they want to be when they grow up? That's amazing. Can you tell me what I need to be when I grow up? I'm so glad you guys know what you want to be when you grow up, because when I was kind of growing up and thinking about what I was going to be, I had no clue. I knew I wanted to be an author. I loved books. I had no idea what I was going to write about. I had no idea what I wanted to say in a book, but I love books. Books, I could disappear in a world with books. I could be creative. I could be, in this world with books. And I also knew, weirdly enough, that I wanted to be an inventor. Now this, of course, this is a lot younger than you guys. This is like when I was in elementary school and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, people ask me, what do you want to be? I want to be an author and an inventor, okay? And I don't know if you guys know, and I hope this is not aging me too much, but I loved Back to the Future. I wanted to build that time machine. I was like trying to make a time machine when I was 10 years old, and I thought that was so cool. And I just loved Doc Brown and how he was kind of zany, and I kind of felt like I was a little bit zany myself. And I loved science. Of course, I have to bring that in, but I loved science, and probably a lot of that had to do with my older brothers, my mom. She was a science teacher. And I used to love going out into nature and just exploring nature and the world. And I loved science, and I loved writing. So I didn't know where that was going to come from. And I'm so glad that we talked about passion, and we've talked about trying to figure out where the world's greatest needs and your greatest passion lies, and how it can combine together. And one thing I did know for sure is I wanted to make a difference. Okay, so here I am. I love writing. I love inventing things, and I wanted to make some kind of a difference in the world. And I hope you guys maybe are in that same place. Like, you just know, what is it out there I need to be doing? And I guess the key is you want to make a difference in some part of the world, and some part of your life, and your family, and your city and communities. But here's the thing. I think the world actually really needs amazing, creative problem solvers. I mean, think about how much things like cancer may have touched your lives, or think about how terrorism affects all of our lives, and how we're thinking about that right now. And think about natural disasters and recovering from that, and we mentioned Macondo, the oil spill. Think about how those things in the world needs people to problem solve and be creative problem solvers. And I felt like tonight I wanted to tell you that if you're creative, if you like to write, if you want like art, that's okay. You can combine that with problem solving to solve some of these great problems. And I want to challenge or tell you guys that I'm almost certain there's somebody in this room today that's going to be an engineer. Now, engineer, right? What do you guys think of when you think of engineer? Howard Wolowitz, the guy on Big Bang Theory. Maybe you think of Dilbert, the guy, I don't know if y'all watched The Knack, but The Knack, where he goes, as a little kid, he goes, and the mom, has to get a prescription from a doctor because he has the knack, and he's going to be an engineer, and the mom bawls. But there's a lot of misconceptions about engineers. Some people might think they're, train conductors. I mean, that's just something that we, in our minds, have grown up to learn. And kids, as a kid, you think about, you are what you see. So Sally Ride, she said something. She was the first female astronaut. She said, you can't be what you can't see, right? So we see that teachers teach people. And these are all amazing professions, don't get me wrong. Teachers teach people. That's the way they help people. Vets, they help animals. That's how they help the world. And we see doctors and nurses and people who are caring for people and helping people, but you just sometimes don't think of engineers as being, helping, because you don't really see them a lot out in the world and seeing what they're doing. So I'd like you to think about how you got here today. More than likely, you rode in your car. You filled it up with some gasoline, got in your car. That was all brought to you, the car, the rubber, the gasoline in your car, that was all brought to you by a chemical engineer. The bridges and the roads and some of the back roads that I went on, and some of the drainage canals and that kind of stuff, the big buildings and the high rises that we see in Houston, those were all brought to you by a civil engineer. The plastic bags that you probably are eating, or your plastic bottles and the things that you're drinking and eating with, those were also brought to you by an engineer. So engineers are touching our lives daily, except we just, in our mind and the cultural perception of what engineering is, we're thinking of Howard Wolowitz and that kind of thing. But engineering is all around us. It's all over the place. And I'd also like you to think that the root word for engineer, the Latin root word for engineer, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but the Latin root word for engineer is to create. Who would have thought that the Latin root word for engineer is to create? And engineers use science to creatively solve problems. So that's where it comes back to, if you're artistic, if you want to know how to use your creativity and problem solving, that is what the world needs. If you think about what engineers do and the gender barriers that they're already breaking, and the women and female engineers that are already out there just silently chugging along, doing their thing. And I was watching something amazing, trying to get pumped for this speech. And it's engineers are, do you remember when we got to Pluto? We saw the amazing images of Pluto last summer. Those are engineers. And I watched a child here for the first time those were engineers, the biomedical engineers, and people that are using bionic legs and prostheses and stuff like that. Those are engineers. Those people are changing these people's lives for the better. And it's amazing what engineers can do and what we need. The world needs more engineers. And I think girls today, and I think guys too, but girls for sure, because of your creativity, are going to make amazing, amazing engineers. So with that said, what's my journey? So I loved, you probably hear if you talk to a lot of engineers today, they said, well, a lot of female engineers, they'd say, well, my teachers told me to go into engineering because I liked math and science. I mean, that's almost universal. You could talk to an engineer and they'll say, well, I was told I like math and science, so I should probably go into engineering. And that's exactly what happened to me. You know, my brothers, they became engineers. I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. I didn't even come to things like this. Like, you guys are already a step ahead because you're coming here and you're listening to all these people talk about their careers. It's amazing. It's not something that I did. And I want to applaud you for it, because the more you know about what you want to be when you grow up, or at least to start out, the better. So I went in, of course, okay, I like calculus and I like math and I like doing those things. So here I go to engineering, I go to Texas A&M school, and I go along for a little while, and then about halfway through the semester, I start thinking, I don't think I'm going to fit in here. Like, what does an engineer do? But people are going to find me out as a phony. Like, I want to be an author. I want to be Doc Brown and invent stuff. I'm going to be phony. And so I kind of shied away from engineering for a little while. I was nervous, honestly, and it was hard work. Like, I went through high school, no problem. When I got to Texas A&M, I felt like the middle of the road pack student. Like, I was no longer the all A student anymore. And that really hurt my self-confidence. I wanted to be the smart girl. I wanted to be the most likely to succeed. And I didn't want to go off to school and fail. Like, what would people think of me if I failed? And so after a lot of help from my parents, after a lot of help from counselors, and going to talk to teachers, I realized that it's just going to be hard work. And what I started realizing is that those guys, they were all sitting in class, and that I thought were just, it was a breeze, that they were, didn't have to study at all. Those guys were studying. They were studying, they were going to the library, they were meeting in groups, and they were meeting with their friends, and they were studying those things. And that is the thing that I had to figure out how to do, was to find my group. To find my group of friends, which actually were girls and guys, and we helped each other. So again, I come back to engineers. It's all about helping each other, and especially going through school, you got to find your group of friends that'll help you, who will build you up, and who can help you with studying for exams and figuring out different ways of thinking about problems. So on to my full-time job. I graduated from A&M, chemical engineer, and I went off to the world. And of course, again, I wasn't Doc Brown, and I wasn't an author at that point, didn't know what I wanted to write about, but kept going. And I hired on to BP, actually. And I started working on a platform called Thunder Horse. Now, Thunder Horse is, I love the name, but Thunder Horse is just this huge oil platform out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And one of the things, that was back in 2003, they were trying to create a tool that could find teensy tiny little cracks in this piping that's like a mile beneath the ocean floor. I mean, we're sending this tool basically to crawl around into the pipes that would eventually be filled with oil and bring it up to the platform. And they wanted that little tool to find an itty bitty sized crack that you could barely even see up here in the surface, send the signal back, and not to mention the tool had to not only go out there and find it, but had to come back again in one piece. And if you don't think of innovative, inventing type stuff, that it was state-of-the-art type of stuff. And just out of college, that's the team I was on. And not only was I on that team, but I was leading that team. They were depending on me to lead and find and develop this tool. Now, how close could you get? I wasn't going back in time or building a time machine, but that was one of my most inventive, innovative jobs I had. Then I was in a program called the Challenge Program, and when you guys get out into the world, definitely try and find a place that has places that you can grow and learn and figure out what you like and figure out what fits. And so BP had this great program. I feel like it's BP night, but BP has this great program called the Challenge Program. And what that was every year you could go to a different to a different platform, or you can go to a different part of the company, and you kind of figure out what you're doing, but also you're going deep. You're going deeper into your profession. So I was, engineering for another oil platform called Mad Dog. Now, Mad Dog became my baby. I loved that oil platform. I loved the people who worked on it. And I really felt in that job that I was helping people. So I ticked off my Doc Brown. I ticked off my, this Mad Dog platform and helping them. And the reason why I was helping them as an engineer was I was keeping them safe. There's people, when we have hurricanes that come through in Houston, and we think about, everything's shutting down and all that stuff, and we're all evacuating. There's still guys and girls, there's still guys out on those oil platforms that are still getting the oil out of the ground and shutting those plants down safely. And so my job was, they called it a facility engineer, but my job was to make sure that when they were running that platform, when they were shutting the platforms down, just everyday life in general, that they were safe out there. And that's called process safety. And that's where I started learning that was one of my great passions in life, was process safety. And what you do in process safety is you have a big vessel full of explosive material, oil and gas, and you got to make sure that you're running it at the right pressures and the right temperatures so that somebody doesn't walk by it and it doesn't explode. And so that right there, guys, that's helping somebody. I mean, sometimes you have to take a step back and think, like, what am I doing? But we're all helping people. In that particular case, I was helping people stay safe. And I love that platform. It was like my own. Fast forward a few years, my condo happened. I went on maternity leave. I have 3 children right now, but at the time I had my daughter, Allie. And Allie, she turned about 3-4 years old, and she starts asking me questions about, Mom, why is there, God, what would she say? Why can you see the moon during the day? Okay, so I'm a 4-year-old driving her to daycare, and I'm like, okay, what are you talking about? And Mom, why if I rub my balloon in my hair, why does the static come out? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like quit asking me all these questions, like I'm busy or whatever, or I'm going through Target and I can't answer your question. But she kept asking, and I was like, man, she reminds me so much of myself. And I started thinking, if I stop answering her questions, she might stop asking. And so I took a step back and I was like, you know what, let's go investigate. Let's go look and see why we rub the balloon in our hair, and let's go test out, and it kind of made me start realizing and remembering my love of science again. Because I had, kind of forgotten that childlike curiosity of Doc Brown and inventing time machines and being a kid that could conquer the world. And so I took a step back and I started blogging. And I started, blogging is just a really formal way of saying I was journaling online. And I like to think of myself as Julia and Julia, but not quite like that. So Julia and Julia is where Julia, I don't even know her last name, but she liked Julia Childs, and she wanted to do every Julia Childs recipe, so she started blogging about her Julia Childs recipes and all that stuff she did. So I wasn't making, the pork whatever dishes, but I was doing little science experiment, and I was sharing those things with her, and I was sharing it with my friends that were moms that had kids too. And what I started learning, and of course I love this stuff, and what I started learning was there's a lot of moms out there that are really insecure about science and insecure about what am I doing? I have a daughter who's asking me so many questions. Should I buy her Goldie blocks? Should I buy her Legos? And we buy them the Legos and we buy them the Goldie blocks, but then we don't know what to do after that. Like, do we bring them to these STEM events? Like, what do we do with them to keep them interested in science? And I started learning a few things. So one was that moms need help, helping others. And I also learned that through the course of sharing, I started realizing, hey, I've got something I can write about. And I happened to meet a friend, and she was like, hey, you've talked about writing a book this whole time. Why don't you just write what you're doing? And I was like, all right. So I sat down last June, and I woke up at 5 o'clock every morning. I was pregnant with my 3rd child at the time, and I started writing. And I just started getting it out there. And I was like, this is what I've learned. This is what I learned at BP. This is what I've learned as being an engineer, as blogging, as a mom. When I'm finding out all the things that I have, like this here, it's actually funny that y'all pulled this up. I didn't think you were going to, but 5 words never to say to a girl in STEM. Like I was writing about this stuff. And I'll tell you what the words are in just a minute. I'll let you hang on to those. But I started just getting it all out there. And And what I'm realizing now is that I'm meeting a need. You know, I've found, there's this great quote that says, to find your passion, and I don't really like that word passion, because I mean, I think your passions change. Like, you don't have to pick a passion in engineering or passion in something. It changes, it evolves. I mean, look what I wanted to be an author and inventor, and now I'm, you know, it ebbs and flows. But I love this quote that said, to find your calling is you have to find your deepest gladness that meets the world's deepest hunger. So how can you help people with your most thing that makes you the happiest? And what I found was, what makes me happy is to encourage girls in STEM, because I truly believe in my heart that there's a little girl sitting out there that needs to hear that she can do it. She needs her mom, or she needs me, or she needs a teacher to tell her that she's going to solve these problems, that we're going to find the cure for cancer and terrorism and natural disasters. I just feel it in my heart that some girl needs to hear that. But in my research with my book, I'm learning and recalling that there's things that girls we take things really hard. We're already hard on ourselves. We're already critical of ourselves. And some of these courses that get into engineering, they're hard. And so you have to learn, and intelligence is not something you're born with. So if I had to give you something to take away with, intelligence is not something you're born with. It's something you work hard at. And you have to grow and have challenges and work hard at. It's not going to be easy. I mean, going to school and being in science and engineering and math, it's not easy. You have to study and work hard and find your friends that help you do it. Five words never say to a girl in STEM. Oh, actually, y'all can probably read that. Don't be hard on yourself. Actually, it's 6 words. Don't be so hard on yourself. I had people that were telling me that, and I was like, don't tell me that. Like, I'm already hard on myself. So I wrote this as kind of one of those things. I posted it on LinkedIn. I posted it to some of my friends, and it really resonated, because we're all hard on ourselves. We're all here to learn. But us girls, we don't need to hear that, because we're already critical of ourselves. So the thing I wanted to tell you about this particular thing is, give yourself space. Give yourself space to learn, to grow, to find challenges, to find your calling, to grow in your life and figuring out the pieces. Life is like a big painting full of dots, like a Monet painting, right? And you don't really quite appreciate it until you can take a step back and say, oh, that's what that all meant. Those dots and all that stuff, maybe it didn't connect at some time, but now it's making this beautiful piece of artwork that I can understand now. And I'm kind of at that place in my life where it's like, now I understand why I went through those challenges. Now I understand why I did those things. And as a little girl thinking, I wanted to be an author and a, Doc Brown. Well, now I get why those were placed in my heart. So be open to change, like the Monet painting. It always comes back to who you can help and how to creatively solve those problems, helping those people. And the last thing I wanted to say was to find a project that greatly affects your life. So, of course, I'm pushing for being an engineer, right? But find those problems that you think you can creatively solve. So if you have food allergies, maybe you can't eat that pizza because you have a food allergy and you have food allergies to gluten and nuts and stuff like that. Become interested in that. Maybe you're the one that's going to figure out how to get rid of those food allergies, or how to get rid of that chemical that's in that grain that is making you have that food allergy. Or if you want to help the environment, you're seeing trash along the road or the water, oil spills or stuff, be an environmental engineer, because that's what environmental engineers do. If you want to create websites that help people, to connect people, be a computer engineer. I mean, there are so many things you can think of that will help the world, and engineering is there to help you creatively solve those problems. Thank you.